Hi everybody, how y'all doing? It's gonna be a small evening, I have a feeling. Day before a holiday, Thanksgiving's coming. Oh good, a few more people are logging in. How's everybody's week? Good. I'm doing well. Tonight, feel free if you want, and if you have microphones, to unmute them when you want to say something. We're gonna do a little bit more of an informal discussion. We're not going to do a lecture this week. I think I told you guys last week as far as the schedule goes with the holiday. I originally scheduled things a little bit incorrectly, so next week we're going to be handling Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and we're going to be doing Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So it's kind of a double feature for the evening, so it's going to be a long night next week. But tonight's going to be, I guess, relatively short. We're going to be dealing with the movie Ready Player One, which you guys are supposed to watch for today. So what did you think? Did you see it? How many of you saw it recently? How many of you saw it in the past? How many of you didn't get a chance to do it? Okay, good. You watched it recently or a while back? Twice this week. Nice. Does that mean you liked it a lot, or you just weren't able to pick up everything that was going on? Because there's a ton of stuff going on in the background in that movie. Okay. Camera. All right. You meant to watch it yesterday. You have a horse? I'm assuming you have a horse. If you had a horse,
Sorry, I'll go ahead and unmute. You have several. I have a horse, and I take care of my mom's horse. Two
Oh,
mules, two mini donkeys, and
wow.
a mini horse as well.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Sorry to hear that there was an injury.
Hey, it was minor, but
Okay.
still needed some attention.
Yeah, well, that can get in the way of things, so it's probably important to take care of. So you didn't get to watch it then. So, have you seen it in the past?
No, but I read some synopses online
Okay.
before class, and I was trying to get a feel for it. And apparently, it was a novel beforehand, so I was reading some summaries of that too.
Yeah, Ernest Cline wrote the novel. I haven't read the novel. I've had students in the past that have read the novel, saw the movie, didn't like the movie because they read the novel, which is not unusual. Usually the books are better than the movie. In most cases, that's true. I think there were a lot of changes with the movie, which made some people a little bit upset. So, but if you haven't read the book, I think the movie's fantastic. So, um, if you get a chance, since it is I guess relatively speaking, it's a long holiday weekend. So there's no classes at the college, but probably a good time to take in some movies, especially if you're getting together with friends or family. I always think that the best way to watch a movie is actually with other people that you can then discuss the movie with. I never like watching movies by myself because then I feel like I need to tell somebody about it, and especially if it's a movie that you really like and get excited about, and you want to try to tell somebody about it, and it's never the same. It's kind of like when you go on a vacation and you take photos of all the awesome things that you see, and you come back and show people the photos, and it's like, okay, those are nice, but no, they don't never quite do it justice. So, yeah, check it out soon. And I'm probably going to spoil some things as we talk this evening. Now, you just mentioned that you saw the movie twice this week. So you were working with the worksheet, I take it, judging by the last thing that you wrote. Yeah, okay. So were you able to fill out the entire worksheet? Cool. Awesome. Then I won't be giving you too many answers, and you might be able to share more responses with everybody, because what I want to do tonight, this is kind of my vision for our informal discussion evening. Let's talk about the hero's journey in the movie. Let's talk about the movie and different things that you liked about it. So it doesn't have to be specifically related to the hero's journey that we've been talking about all semester. But I'm going to bring up the worksheet that I gave you guys and probably look at a few of the different stages in the hero's journey that hopefully you'll be able to identify in the course of watching the film. And I'm not going to hit all of them, obviously, because since some of you have not yet seen the movie, if I did that, I would basically do the whole worksheet for you, which I can't do. And remember, the worksheet is for bonus points, right? So with your quizzes, if you're able to, and actually, let me go ahead. Whoops. Oh, logged out of that by accident. Okay, not a big deal. Let me bring up the worksheet and then. Well, anyways, let me go back to what I was saying. So we're gonna go through the worksheet a little bit. We'll talk about the film. We will talk about. I don't know. I guess we could just see where the conversation goes. A lot of times, especially with you guys, because you're one of my favorite groups. You've always had really good comments and stuff. At least after the lectures, we've sat around and talked about things. So we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us in the course of the evening. So let me bring up the worksheet in case you haven't seen it. The best idea is to actually use the worksheet as you're watching the film, so that you can kind of fill it out as you go. But it's not that difficult to fill out even afterward, because you're probably going to be thinking about things, and as you, you'll be able to remember most of the major scenes, I would imagine. But if you miss something, go back and watch it. Like I said, it is the type of movie you could watch not only a couple times, you'd have to watch it over and over and over again, even to pick up half of the things that are going on. This movie is so jam-packed with, I guess Easter eggs is the best word for it. I mean, you guys familiar with what Easter eggs are? I know it's, once upon a time that the idea of an Easter egg was a little bit different than what it is today. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with Easter anymore. But who wants to tell me what an Easter egg is? I'm sure you guys know. Yeah, little tidbits, little tributes that are kind of built into other movies, not just movies, but with this film, right? It's a movie about video games. It's a movie about VR. I mean, specifically, it's virtual reality. So. And it has a lot of stuff that goes back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's, if you're nostalgic for some of those early eras, that it's the kind of stuff that you'd be able to pick up on. If you're not familiar with those eras, right? If you're younger generations might not pick up the same things that I would look for as I'm watching the movie, because I'm old, right? I grew up in the 70s, so there's a lot of things that I see going on that might fly over the head. But there's stuff for, I think, every generation in this film. So actually, why don't we start here, since we're talking the setting for the movie, right? It's this virtual reality. How many of you guys have done VR before? No. Okay. That's one no. Another no. Okay. How many of you guys are... okay. So this is a crowd with very little experience in virtual reality. So let's talk a little bit about virtual reality. I'll just be able to give you, I guess, my experience with virtual reality. Oh, here's my buddy. Where'd you come from? He was supposed to be in the room in the back. But since we're informal, he's not going to interrupt too many things. I'll send you to Mama in a second. Okay. This is Caesar, by the way. What's that face you're making?
Hi, Caesar.
Say hi. You can't see her, can you?
I don't see it.
No, you can't see anything.
I want to see her.
Well, you can't. Sorry. Anyways, VR. I guess there's a couple of different ways you could think about VR, right? It's this idea of virtual reality. It's like, fake reality. It's like, oops, what did you do? All right, you have to put you down because you're messing with the keyboard here. Okay, there you go. All right, let me do this, since you haven't actually done. It kind of scares you. All right, that's interesting. What about it scares you? The fact that it would probably feel like you're maybe falling. That was my first experience with VR. I felt like I needed to get down on the ground and hold on to something. Okay, yeah. It's disorienting if you haven't done it. Let me do this. How many of you have been to an amusement park like down in Orlando? I mean, one of the big ones, like Walt Disney World or Universal Studios. Islands of Adventure in particular is fantastic.
When I was in my undergrad, I went to the Marine Corps training base, and they had like an Osprey flying simulator, and it
Okay.
kind of felt like you were flying when you did the simulator, but you didn't go anywhere. And it wasn't goggles; you were just in this cockpit. It was all dark, and you were controlling the computer. So it was like one of those like race car games and pizzerias, except it was a giant military airplane.
Okay, so it had the screen, so it looked like you were flying.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
crashed and died and everything like that. And like you could almost feel your stomach dropping when you're doing it too.
Yeah, it's really weird that because it's mainly working right on your visual field and maybe auditory sensation. The unless the thing moved, and then of course it plays into a lot of the other senses, which probably did if it's a military simulator.
It was
So
actually stationary. It
it
didn't
was
move. Hmm.
okay. That's interesting. So yeah, that's the type of thing that I was exactly thinking of when I was talking about Islands of Adventure. There's a couple great rides down there. The Harry Potter ride, of course, is fantastic. If you've ever been to the Hogwarts setup down there, they've got a Harry Potter ride, which is basically like you are in the world, right? You're kind of moving along, and there's all kinds of screens with videos playing that are you're kind of surrounded with. But there's other things as well. So you're moving, plus you've got the visual stuff. The one that first one that I ever saw when I was down there, this is a while back before they even had a Harry Potter section of the park. They had Spider-Man. So Spider-Man simulator where you're in this car and you're driving through the city. Of course, you're not really doing very much. The thing moves a little bit, but it's got the motion. It's got the sensation of heat and cold. So they play with temperature. You get splashed with water at various spots. You've got the sounds. You've got the all the stuff that goes into it. So really feel like you're there. And at one point, you're on the top of a building, and the car kind of falls over the edge, and you literally feel like you're about to hit the ground as you see the street coming up in front of you. So it does create that kind of emotional response. All right, it's like you're in the world, but you're of course safe the whole time, which is a neat thing. So virtual reality does the exact same thing. So it can be disorienting and it can be scary, but I don't know. We talked about Aristotle this semester, I know, a couple of times, and when Aristotle talked about ancient theater, particularly drama, he talked about tragedy being something that was a cathartic experience. How many of you have heard the word catharsis before? Or cathartic? Okay. What's your
It's an emotional release, right?
Yeah. It's kind of described usually as some kind of purging of negative feelings and emotional release type of thing that, healing. Good. So when you go to the theater, he said, your emotions are engaged, right? You see these things and you allow yourself to be swept away with the storyline. Some people don't allow that to happen, and that's kind of, I think, detracting from the whole experience. But we have the same thing today when you go to the theaters, right? If it's a really, really good movie and you allow yourself to just get invested in the story. I mean, if it's sad, you'll cry. If it's funny, you'll laugh. If it's scary, you'll close your eyes and you'll jump and all those types of things. So it engages the emotions. And VR does this in a way too. So when the movie is doing the hero's journey, I think I said even in our setup before that I think it's one of the most modern versions of the hero's journey, just because it's the exact experience that we all can have today in a virtual reality setting. And what I mean by that is not that you're going to play a virtual reality game and come out transformed necessarily, taking on certain virtues and values and things like that, the way hero myths are supposed to embed within you. But they definitely can help you overcome different types of anxieties and fears. For instance, I have a headset that I bought a couple years back. It's a freestanding unit. It's not one of the really super high-tech ones. It's the Oculus Go. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's got some really neat things in it. It's not anything like the movie. You can't move. You kind of are stationary. You've got a little controller, but they've got a few experiences that you can access that have to do with facing your fears. As a matter of fact, there's a game in there that's called Face Your Fears. And there's all kinds of different scenarios. If you're afraid of spiders, if you're afraid of snakes, if you're afraid of heights, some of these things put you in those situations. And again, if you allow yourself to buy into the whole thing and just pretend you are where it puts you, it can be terrifying. First time I ever tried it was actually with, what's the system? PlayStation 4, I think, is the one that had the virtual reality for the first time. I know PlayStation has the VR headset, but a friend of mine got it, and you guys know that I'm a Batman fan. So when I heard he had the Batman Arkham VR thing, which is really just kind of a small introduction to VR for the most part. It's not a full game, but I was like, I gotta go try this. You got a chance to actually be Batman in the game, and it was the type of thing I've never done it before, and Batman like perches on the tops of gargoyles at the tops of these skyscrapers, and I literally had to squat down and grab a hold of the floor because I started to get disoriented. Like I felt like I was actually going to fall over the edge of a building. So yeah, it could be kind of scary. Even if you're scared, though, I think you should try it. I mean, the idea is you're completely safe, with maybe the possibility of motion sickness. I had that experience once in one game where I actually got a little bit nauseous. But other than that, okay, 3D makes you motion sick. Yeah, you might not like it then because it really is 3D. But of course, there are games. Here's one that I could recommend. I got this one from my Oculus Go. Have you guys ever heard of an escape room? I know they've got some in the city, some places like that. Yeah, they've got a virtual reality escape room game that I was able to find, and it's really, really kind of cool. If you like, solving puzzles and trying to figure out, you've got like a certain time limit, and you gotta get yourself out of this, sinking ship, or I forgot what the scenario was, but so it's not necessarily everything's going to be scary or disorienting in that way. There's really not much motion in that one. It's kind of you're just in a room with different things to solve. So, you might want to start with something that's a little more tame if you want to at least give it a shot. But anyways, that whole experience, and I guess this is where I usually go with this movie, since we've been talking about the hero's journey. Not only is this movie a fantastic hero's journey, but the idea of that, I guess this is a place where we can look at the stages on the checklist that I've got here. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right screen. Okay, here you go. Okay, so the call to adventure, right? You got the call to adventure, you've got the liminal experience where you cross the first threshold and you're into this world of wonder and adventure and transformation. It's kind of the Act 2. If you remember, the transition from Act 1 to Act 2 involves that crossing over into that realm, and that's where you are ultimately going to transform. You're going to face your death at some point and then hopefully overcome it. All that kind of stuff is obviously in the movie, and the VR setup really is such a clear idea of that liminal experience, right? Crossing over, which we've talked about in the past as being like this inward retreat. In some ways, Campbell talks about the belly of the whale. You hear people talk about the labyrinth. You got these different symbols that show up in mythology where you go inward. At least that's the way Campbell views it, as kind of an inward journey into the subconscious or the unconscious world, place of death and rebirth and all that kind of stuff. And I'll talk about more of that when we do Narnia next week, because the whole Narnia series is, this liminal experience. How many of you have read Narnia? I mean, I know you guys are supposed to be reading the book for this semester, but okay, so we'll talk more about specific books next time, specifically the first book and the third book in the series. But the it's this crossing over moment, and this movie clearly has the same thing. And when you go in, I think I mentioned in the preview for the movie that it's this idea of the inside being so much bigger than the outside world, right? You're kind of in this own limited space. Half the time he's just in this little trailer, right, in this trailer park where he's hooked up to a treadmill and he's hooked up to the VR set. But other than that, the room's not very big. As a matter of fact, at the end of the movie, they're in a van, right? That's the entire surroundings. But once they're inside the world, it's infinite, right? It's about as big as your mind or your imagination will let it be. So it's just this idea of boundlessness, potential, all that kind of stuff, which is a really cool way to handle that journey, that inward experience. So I kind of like that. Where was I going with that? I guess is the next question. Yeah, we're going to look at the worksheet. So as other things jump into my mind, I'm sure I'm going to go off on different rabbit trails, but why don't we go and take a look at some of the things that I have on the worksheet. And let me just make this a little bit more clear by removing the camera for a second. And if you haven't already done the worksheet, the way I have it set up is for bonus points. You've got the different stages of the 17 stages of Campbell's monomyth, right? Hero's journey, listed in the order that Campbell lays them out, though you don't ever have to assume that the movie is going to follow any kind of order or hit every single stage. So there may be stages in here that you'll see just not be in the movie, or rather you won't see in the movie. And at the end I added a couple others, basically some Jungian archetypes like the shadow, the anima, and some figures like the mentor that we've discussed in the past, just to round out the number to 20. So that means, you got 20 points maximum that you guys can earn by filling it out. And if, you don't have to fill it all out. If you fill out only one, then you'll get 1 point. If you do the whole 20, you get 20 points. And I'll add those to one of your highest quiz grades. So that's how we're using it. I think I may have explained that before, but let's take a look at, I guess, the call to adventure and the refusal of the call. Let's just start at the very top and see what you guys, at least those that have seen the movie, where would you see the call to adventure take place in the film? No, that's why I can't move this. Okay, I was looking at the wrong place. My mouse was on the wrong screen. Okay, where would the call to adventure be? Okay, yeah, it's actually not necessarily that he wants to find the keys, but it's the initial announcement about the keys. And what's the context of that actual scene there? Who presents the quest, right? I mean, it's a quest movie, which means we're going to be talking about King Arthur again, or Jason and the Golden Fleece, or whatever other quest motif we've dealt with this semester. Yeah, it was at the funeral, at least the video, the death video for James Halliday, right? So the Halliday character, right, sits up in his coffin, and he addresses the camera, and he issues this call to adventure, right? He says, they've got this quest, and what's at stake in the quest? I mean, in a way, it's safe because you're in this virtual world. So, are you really going to risk your life? Possibly, but what is everybody after? Because the keys are one thing, right? You're after the keys, but the keys are a stepping stone towards what we could say is the ultimate boon, right? The final goal, which is the Easter egg, right? Again, a movie filled with Easter eggs, of course, is an egg that you come to at the end. But what does that represent? If you get to the egg, what does the character? Yes, control the entire oasis. So again, for those of you that haven't seen the movie, the oasis is the entire virtual world that this guy built, right? He's this mastermind, kind of I don't know, not Tony Stark necessarily, but again, he's this brilliant game designer. So you inherit that, and of course it brings with it all kinds of financial gain, right? This is the thing everybody is after. So everybody's out there trying to attain the keys, and there's different puzzles that you actually have to find or solve, or competitions or challenges that you have to overcome. And nobody at this beginning point of the movie has actually accomplished anything, right? Nobody's found a single key, and everybody's been looking, including the whole company, the bad guy. Who's the adversary in the movie? If you're going to name the bad guy, I forget the actual name of the character that runs the company, but the company as a whole you could think of as the adversary or the enemy. What company was that? Yeah, IOI. Good, the leader of IOI. So IOI is they're the multi-billion-dollar corporation that's out to take everything over. So the little guy, which is represented by our main character. So who is the main character of the movie? Speaking of Wade, right? Wade Watts. And what's his avatar's name? Right, because you take on this alternate role when you go into the oasis, where you could look like whatever you want to look like. What's the character's name there? Because this is going to be back to the King Arthur theme, as a matter of fact. Can't spell it. You don't need to spell it. Just, roughly, if you want to type it out. I think some of the names of the characters in the movie, they actually spell with numbers in there too, so I don't think there's a correct way to spell it. Yeah, P. Parzival, which is a variation on Percival, who we talked about when we did Arthur in pretty good detail. What's Percival known for doing in the story of Arthur? I wasn't planning on getting around to King Arthur this soon, but maybe we're going to have to. Throwing the sword. Well, in the movie Excalibur, we watched some clips, and he was the one that actually threw the sword back at the end of that film. But in the actual tradition, he doesn't do that. That's Sir Bedivere that tosses the sword back at Arthur's death. There's something else Percival is known for. And there are various variations on the name Percival, right? So you got Peredur, kind of in the Welsh version. Percival, Parzival actually is a way that it shows up in some other texts. I believe von Essenbach uses the name Parzival. But he's on a particular quest, as is the movie main character. What is the most famous quest of all? The Grail quest. Very good. So this is it's a Grail quest movie. So maybe we should just jump in and take care of, King Arthur right now, since we're already on it. So you've got the main character, who is really a Grail knight, right, in the tradition. He's the one who first sees the Grail in the very first appearance of the Grail in Chrétien de Troyes, right? Percival. So you've got the main character, who's a Grail knight. You've got the quest, which is obviously for the Oasis, for the keys, for the Easter egg, for everything that comes with it, right? This is the Holy Grail. I mean, for lack of a better word, this is exactly what they're after. So you've got those two elements very clear. What about other characters in King Arthur, where you have at least people that are presented with, what's it called? There's one character in particular that I'm thinking of that looks like a King Arthur character. He's not necessarily a King Arthur character, but there's a very famous character in King Arthur who is the mentor of King Arthur. Oops, again, I'm on the wrong.
Merlin?
Merlin, okay. Now, who in the movie kind of comes across as a Merlin-like figure? Okay, I gotta see this. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat because I was looking for something else. Yeah, Halliday in the Oasis, right? This Halliday's avatar, Anorak, right? I think is how the name goes. And it's been, there we go. Okay, so yeah, he comes across him, and he's this old bearded figure with kind of the druidic hood on. He's in that very mode, right? So clearly, I think they're dealing with, again, the King Arthur idea. So again, that sort of answers one of the questions on the not study guide. It's not a study guide. What is it called? The worksheet that I gave you. All right, so you've got the mentor figure. As a matter of fact, there are a couple figures that could serve as mentor figures, but Halliday himself is clearly one. Even though he's dead, obviously he still has a big role to play in the movie as an avatar, right? He's part of the Oasis himself. But speaking of this, might as well just move on and talk about the character of Halliday right now in the film. So he's kind of the Merlin figure. But he's a lot more than a Merlin figure, right? How else might you describe Halliday? You could even use religious terminology to kind of describe this guy. Yeah, his mentor. Yeah, he serves the role of the mentor, especially because he can go back. Wade can go back and go to the library and keep accessing the old files and look back at his life and see the different things that he said, the different clues that he left along the way. So he's really guiding the hero through the entire journey, even though it's not clear, right? Even though he's dead, right? Good. Yeah, that's exactly it. But of course, everything he goes out and does, he ultimately has to do on his own, which is also a pretty important idea for the mentor figure, right? Not to be involved. Ultimately, the hero needs to depart from the mentor to do the thing. That's why Obi-Wan has to die in the very first Star Wars movie so Luke can go on. That's why Yoda has to die so that, again, Luke can go on to be his own man and stuff like that. A Jesus figure, yes, and I was actually thinking something even more than the Jesus figure, and again, it depends on your theology. Jesus, in Christianity, of course, is God. So maybe that's what you're getting at, and that's the term I was actually thinking you guys would maybe throw out. He is God, right? I mean, he's the God figure in the movie. And why would you equate him with God? Why is he kind of a God character? God-like. Yeah, because he created the entire world, right? This is his world. I mean, this is his baby. It's his creation. He's the master of the whole thing. So, yeah. So, yeah, he plays the role of a mentor. He plays the role of God. And because God is often pictured, especially within Christianity, as a father figure, then you could also say he has the role of the father in the movie, which is hopefully going to clue you into as one of the stages that we get to a little bit later in the hero's journey. So, yeah, that's the character. So let's go back to the King Arthur stuff since we were talking about that. So you've got even references to different King Arthur movies that show up in the story. The what's Parzival have on the back of his jacket? That's another inclusion. And again, you got to look everywhere in the movie. There's all kinds of things included. I keep telling myself I need to go back and watch the movie a bunch more times and try to count how many times you could find the bat symbol. Didn't notice, and that's one of the other problems with the movie being so filled with things in the background, is you tend to overlook so many of those things. And again, it could be that you didn't watch it on a big enough screen. And then maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that he has the Excalibur, the sword, on the back of his jacket. Okay, does that seem familiar now that I mentioned it? I don't have a photo of the back of his jacket to pull up, but okay. Anyway, since it's a movie filled with Easter eggs, there are things from, like I said, King Arthur movies. Okay, a sword does. Yeah, that's pretty much where it's from. From different King Arthur movies that were Easter eggs thrown in. And again, if you're not familiar with those movies, you'd miss them. Again, that's the problem with Easter eggs. If you don't know what to look for, then you won't see anything. It's just a bunch of stuff going on. So how many of you guys are fans, and I know there's some fans in the class, of Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Okay. What did you notice anything from Monty Python and the Holy Grail that, where is it? I'm trying to find another visual here. Oops. But I don't have it. That's weird. Okay. I was pretty sure I had a visual from the movie, but I don't. Maybe I can pull it up again and see. Okay. All right. So now you got to turn on your thinking cap and see if you could figure out where in the movie there was a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. What was it? You want me to just give it away? There we go. Okay, I knew I had a visual somewhere I could put up on the screen. Makes it a little bit more interesting. It wasn't the Grail, but it was a rather humorous item that plays a big part in not a big part, it's actually a pretty small part in the movie. Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. If you're a fan of the movie, you've got to remember the Holy Hand Grenade. Of course, if you haven't watched, yeah, to kill the rabbit. Exactly. Where they read that passage from the Book of Armaments about how to count to 3, which is really, really funny. And if I could do it from memory, I would recite the whole scene, but I'm not going to because I can't. Yeah, one of the funniest parts. So again, that actually shows up. I don't remember if he bought the Holy Hand Grenade, but they talk about the Holy Hand Grenade in the movie. At several points, they bring it up. They actually show the Holy Hand Grenade. So, clearly, if you're not a Monty Python fan, you'd miss that. You don't know what they're talking about, but it's, a tribute. And again, it's King Arthur related, which is, I think, intentional. But there's another reference that is even maybe harder to find because fewer people, I think, have seen the movie. I think Monty Python and the Holy Grail is one of those movies. There's a lot of people that are familiar with it from all different generations, but we watched Excalibur, or parts of Excalibur, when we talked about King Arthur. There's another thing that they took straight from Excalibur. It wasn't a visual thing. It was something you had to listen for. Did anybody catch anything? And we actually did see a clip where this was in there. So if you remember one of the clips that we saw and then saw this movie, you might say, hey, I heard that somewhere before. No. Okay. All right. It was the magic words. And I was about to say Klaatu Verata Niktu because last week we were dealing with Army of Darkness. So it's the wrong movie. The line is the one that was spoken. Actually, several people spoke it. Morgana spoke it at the end, but Merlin recites an incantation. I forgot what it's called. The spell of changing? I don't know. I have to look it up to remember what the actual spell is called. But it's when he changes Uther into the vision of the Duke in order to sleep with Igraine at the beginning of the movie. Do you guys remember that scene? Okay. Yeah, he says, I'm trying to remember what the words were, and then you might be able to remember where you saw it in the film. Anal Nathrak Uthvath Bethad Dothiel Diende, or something like that. Okay, so those lines, and again, Merlin said it over and over and over and over again, and then Morgana does it again at the end of the movie, or somewhere in the middle of the movie. But where do you see that in the film? Anybody remember? Because that very magic incantation is used at one or two spots in the film. It's with the orb, right? When they turn the orb on. Yeah, right, to blow up the orb. Very good. Yeah, nice. And again, if you haven't seen Excalibur, that's the type of thing you wouldn't pick up on. But that's what I love about the movie, right? Every single thing you can imagine is there somewhere. So yeah, you've got a lot of stuff from King Arthur, obviously, and it's a Grail Quest movie, so it would be expected. And like I said last time, it is the most famous myth of all time as far as there being movie versions, literary tradition, all that kind of stuff. So here's just another movie that's playing on the whole Arthurian idea in a new way, very, very different way. So, okay, what else could we look at? We were talking about the Call to Adventure. So we got the Call to Adventure issued when Halliday sits up in his coffin and offers this challenge. So you have the quest, the refusal. That's the second thing. You don't always see a refusal in the movie. When we talked about Army of Darkness last time, it was very clear that the Call to Adventure is kind of that transitional point as he gets sucked through the portal back in time, remember, to the Arthurian era in that movie. And we said that was very much a refusal of the call because the entire time he's being sucked into the portal, Ash is holding on to the counter, right? And he's trying to resist being sucked away. And of course, he has no choice, right? Sometimes you're swept up in the adventure, despite your best efforts to avoid it. Okay, but is there a refusal in this movie? Does there seem to be a moment when the character is not wanting to go for the reward? Yeah, okay. That's usually the reaction. This one's kind of difficult. And maybe you didn't find it because it doesn't seem like he does refuse. I mean, as soon as everybody's offered this opportunity to win the Oasis, it's like everybody just puts on their headsets and jumps in the world and starts to go for the quest. So, I mean, you've got everybody participating in this thing. It's like an addiction. Okay. Didn't want to join a clan. He just want to go alone. Right, it's kind of a solo figure. I guess you could think about there being, in a way, two quests in the movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, you've got the quest for the Oasis, the orb, or not the orb, but the egg. You also have the quest in the real world, right? Because there's a parallel between what's going on in the world of VR and what's going on in the real world in this fight against IOI, right? You've got this rebellion or resistance movement that's out there that the other character. So let's jump down to number 7 on the checklist, which is meeting with the goddess. Who would that be? Who would the goddess be? Samantha, very good. And what's her Avatar name. Another name drawn from mythology. Very different mythology than King Arthur, though. And much older. Artemis, very good. And there's the number, right? She's the one that has a number in her name. Yeah, Artemis is what? What is she? She's a goddess, right? She's a Greek goddess. Not to give away too much. Hopefully you already know Artemis, even though we only talked about her maybe briefly when we covered the story of Heracles. But I think it's the only story that I can think of where we may have touched on Artemis, but even then we might not have mentioned her in our lecture. Goddess of hunting, good. She's the goddess of the hunt. So how appropriate is that, right? She's on the quest. She's on a hunt for this reward. And now she's fully committed because she's not only hunting, in the virtual world, she's part of this resistance movement. So yeah, she's going to be the goddess figure, the meeting with the goddess, as well as what else to him, to Wade, to Parzival? What other challenges does he present? And it's not necessarily going to be a negative thing overall. The temptation, right, because he falls in love with her, right? He becomes enthralled with her, and there's this little bit of a danger because he doesn't really know who this is on the other side, right? You're in this virtual world, so you don't know what real reality is, which is also interesting. This is one of the things that makes the movie compelling, in that it's not just an action adventure where you're in this world of technology, but in a way it critiques kind of the world of technology, or kind of an over immersion into that world, which is really, I think, a danger today. Now, in the movie, I mean, I guess there's the idea that you don't know who on the other end of the avatar is, which brings to mind things that you might come across with like internet dating, things like that, where you start to have this relationship across the web with somebody, and you have really no idea if this person is who they're saying they are, if they're presenting themselves in the right way. And there's all kinds of scary situations that you hear about kids being kind of lured into these horrible situations through that kind of stuff. So that's a real threat. But the movie itself, I think, goes further than that in critiquing the whole idea of technology, because at the end, remember when Wade wins the prize and inherits the oasis, he kind of sets it up so everybody has to stop at a certain point, right? You have these times when it's kind of closed down, so it forces you to again be part of the real world. And that's the thing that I'm thinking about is when it comes to things like these, right? The cell phones, you get in a room with 20 other people, not now because of COVID, but back when the college was open, you'd be in a classroom or you'd be in various places on campus, and nobody talks to each other anymore. You're all kind of you're talking to people, but you're talking to people through text, or it's just this weird thing how we get cut off literally from reality. We're not even in virtual reality. This is just a smartphone, but it tends to take up so much time and energy, not to mention the stuff that goes on with social media and the different impact that has on society. This is just, it's all still brand new. There was none of this when I was a kid. So the implications or the effects of this kind of stuff today, we got to wait really and start to see how this unfolds over time. And it could take a while before we realize what all the negatives are. It seems like really positive in the beginning. So the movie, I think, does a neat job in at least keeping you aware of this. But good literature does this. You go all the way, not all the way back, because it's not that far in the history of literature, but how many of you have read Frankenstein or seen a movie Frankenstein? There's a lot of versions of that. There haven't been very many that have stuck to the actual story. Okay, did you see the one with Robert De Niro? The Mary Shelley version, who was the one that wrote the actual novel. Okay, I've seen several versions. That's the best one as far as sticking to the story. And if you're not familiar with Frankenstein because you haven't seen a movie, one of the problems that most people today have is because of the early movies, everybody tends to think that Frankenstein is the monster. Frankenstein, of course, is not the monster. Frankenstein is the scientist, the doctor, who creates the monster. The monster really doesn't have a name. He's just the creature. So the warning in Frankenstein is, this warning, because when the book was written, it was in the era where you're making all these advances in science, and you've got the possibility in a lot of people's minds that, we could even create life. I mean, how far can this knowledge go? I mean, what kinds of secrets do we have access to with this new thing called science? And, the danger that the movie is warning about is this idea of, trying to become God, right? Trying to become a creator and kind of cross over certain boundaries, and what are the consequences of that? So here's a movie about, I keep saying movie, but the book is this doctor who is really a great guy. I mean, he's got a lot of positive qualities, and he wants to create life here in the laboratory, and he creates this creature. But he's so appalled by its appearance and is terrified of it that he ends up turning his back on it, right? And this creature, from his perspective, this is his creator, basically his father, who's just kind of shut him out, and just he's been forced to go out into the world on his own with nobody to protect him, and he ends up becoming really enraged by the end of the end of the story, in this contest, with this guy who's really been basically a neglected father. So. It's a fantastic novel, and I'm sure I just did it an injustice the way I described it. But it's the same type of thing you're getting in this movie. Of course, it's not maybe as intense as becoming God, though Holiday is in a way God, but it's not the same level of God, I guess, not really literally creating life. But the warning's still there, right? There are problems if you get overly immersed in these types of things. Okay, which is one of the reasons, even on the hero's journey, there's a time when you need to return home. Right at the end of the story, there's the homecoming. Right, you've got to get out of Act 2 and conclude in Act 3. Hopefully you've had your transformation in a positive way by then. But that's necessary to complete the transformation, to complete the story. So anyways, how did I get off on this? Where was I before? We were talking about Samantha. We were talking about Artemis as the meeting of the goddess at temptation. Okay, we'll go back to the refusal of the call. That's where we originally started. Okay, good. Anima, yeah. So you identified her as the anima figure. Yes, you are correct, right? That's the Jungian archetype, the female aspect of the male psyche, according to Jung. Yeah, she really is, because she's the counterpart. She's a lot of the things he needs to be, right? And of course, the love interest and relationship that develops is really important too for him. So very good. I didn't think that would be a super difficult one to figure out, because there aren't very many characters that could fit the bill for the anima. But now I want you to think of her role early on in the movie, and you might be able to figure out where you might see a refusal of call. Maybe in two senses, because like I said, there are two quests going on. Two quests going on. One in the world, one out of the world. I guess even the quest in the world really affects reality outside the world, because you inherit, right, the entire oasis. But what does she point out about him? Let me set up the scene. They've attempted to find the first key. They're in the race, right? This is the big race in the beginning of the movie. She's wrecked her bike and she needs it fixed, and he takes her to his friend, who is able to repair the thing pretty easily. And they're having this conversation in that scene. And in the conversation, she's kind of, I don't say chastising him, but she's, pointing out the fact that he's not doing what? He's in the race, but in a way, he's not in the race. Yeah, he's not living in the real world. That's true. I mean, she's definitely more involved in the real world. She's got a lot more pain in her life. Maybe I shouldn't say that. He's again, like the typical hero. Again, he's raised, without parents, right? This is the thing that we've seen over and over again in these hero stories. There's no parent in the background. This is the child that's been abandoned and lost and cut off and sent into exile, loss of identity, all that kind of stuff fits again with our main character. I didn't put that stuff on this worksheet, but that's very clearly the case. But doesn't she say that he's afraid? He's holding back? Or he's going for it, but he's not going all the way in, because he's afraid of, I guess how she puts it, is zeroing out, right? Losing everything that he's gained. And that's another big lesson in the hero's journey. And part of the key of the transformation is you're going to need to die at some point, right? You got to have that conquest of death. You've got to have the descent into the underworld. And if you're not willing to lay everything on the line, you're not going to come out the hero on the other end, right? You're not going to have the transformation you need to hear. And he's too afraid. So she's pointing out that even though he's in the race, in a way, he's resisting the call. He's refusing to go all in, okay? And it's through her, right, acting as kind of this anima, this goddess figure that convinces him to do things differently, okay? So I guess, at least I would put it that way. And like I said, with the stages in Campbell's monomyth, you could interpret them fairly broadly, which is one of the things people critique the whole idea of, Campbell's monomyth on, is the fact that you could interpret things maybe too broadly and make almost anything fit this scenario. But I think that's fair. I mean, at least to call it a refusal of the call in that sense. So that would be a hard one to find, though, if you're not thinking along those lines. But does that make sense? How that could be a refusal? Yeah, but they did have that conversation. It does seem like, yeah, he might be invested the whole time because he's obviously obsessed with it. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, he borrows his, I forgot what is it, his aunt's gloves or whatever. I mean, he's holed up in that little trailer just doing this thing the whole time. But at least that was her perspective, right? That was Artemis's realization. And that might be the whole idea, is you're supposed to think he's invested the whole time because he thinks he's invested the whole time. I mean, he's not consciously refusing the call, but there's just something, he's not risking everything that he needs to risk, and then he does. But again, it depends on how you interpret it, so you don't have to necessarily see that the same way. And I'm going to be pretty flexible when I grade the worksheets. So when you fill out the worksheet, if you identify a particular scene as, this or that stage, I'll try to keep an open mind to think about how that might fit. It might not be the exact same scene that I would have thought of, but I'm happy to be generous with the bonus points if you put some thought into it. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Any other comments at this stage? Okay, what else can we throw in here? Where was I? Okay, so we clearly crossed the threshold multiple times. It's hard to point to a first crossing of the threshold. The whole movie is crossing back and forth between here and there, inner and outer worlds. Let's see, over here. So, Belly of the Railroad Trials. The Ultimate Boon, we already addressed that one. I'm going to hold off on dealing with the ones at the end, like Master of Two Worlds, Freedom to Live. I think those are pretty easy to find. But here's one that might be difficult to identify, and maybe I might be, again, too generous in my broad interpretation of these stages. But did you find something that you might consider an atonement with the Father stage? An atonement with the Father stage. Might have to think again about who the Father is. And that's fair. Yeah, you might not see things the same way I do. I don't expect people to. It's one of the neat things about human beings, right? We all have different perspectives, see things differently. And it's good to be able to at least say, okay, I try to put yourself in other people's shoes and see the way they think. Okay, an atonement with life itself, as far as him just being able to live a real life, an authentic life, something like that. Yeah, in the end, right. You've got definitely a different character that emerges in the end. Sure. Let me give you a clue as to at least what I was thinking. Maybe you can figure it out, since it's hard to actually read my mind. But we already said that there was one character that is a father figure in the movie, right? A mentor figure, a God figure. Who would that be? Halliday, right, Halliday. Now, he literally obviously isn't the father. So this is not like, Luke and Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi having this reunion as Darth Vader comes back and saves his son. And you've got this redemption scene, which is one of my favorite moments in the entire Star Wars series. But they don't have that kind of relationship, right? And of course, Holliday's dead, so the only relationship that they have is on Wade's part, and of course, it's with the virtual Halliday. But we learn about Halliday's past. We learn about the mistakes that he's made, the things that he regrets the most. And in a way, the entire challenge is set up to see what kind of decision the victor is going to make, whether he's going to make the same mistake that Halliday does. So what was like the big regret? There are actually several big regrets, but what's the big regret with Halliday? And how does it come about as a second chance with Wade at the end of the movie? His friendships, specifically which friendship is the thing that he regrets. Not that he regrets having the friendship, it's the loss of the friendship, right? Again, you might have to remember the other name of the character. Who's the other character that actually has a pretty important role in the movie? Morrow. I'm assuming that's what that means. The M. Yes, Ogden Morrow. Very good. It was his partner, right? They had a falling out because of, not really a falling out, but they started to split apart, and it has to do somewhat with the relationship with the girl, right? That they both, well, that he briefly dated, and then Morrow ended up marrying her. But you get this idea that he regrets something about that relationship, but it's the big regret has to do with the taking the company away from Morrow, right? Taking the whole thing and signing, the signing of that contract. So by the end of the movie, when he wins, he's given an opportunity. Wade's given an opportunity by Halliday to go ahead and sign this contract. And Wade, what does he do when he's presented with that moment? He doesn't sign it, right? He doesn't sign it. He doesn't make the same mistake that Halliday does, and that's where you get this whole revelation at the end that this is the one moment he wanted to see what kind of guy this was going to be. He almost failed in the very end at that last pivotal moment if he had done the wrong thing. So in a way, this is a redemption. Okay, so it's not the same thing as a reunion between father and son, but it is a redemption. It's kind of like a second chance to do things right. So Wade kind of is a replacement. Of course, he takes over Halliday's place as the head of the company and all that kind of stuff. So I think they actually hit that stage in a general way, and I think it was pretty neatly done. But again, you might not agree with that interpretation. Yeah, it's kind of Halliday's atonement with Halliday. And again, you got to keep remembering, even though it seems like Halliday, he's dead, right? This is merely the simulation, right? So Halliday made a mistake, but Wade kind of lives through the whole thing in a new way and has the opportunity to kind of repeat that moment in history. So, yeah. Yeah, he was alive when he wrote the program, but he wasn't alive to see how it would play out if there would be anybody that would come along and do the right thing. So yes, Halliday was actually setting it up so that the right choice would have to be made. Obviously, I think if you made the wrong choice again, you'd fail. So it kind of was set up so that the right choice would be made in the end. So it's, his moment of redemption. So I'm probably giving away way too many stages. But I was actually able to find some really cool movie posters for the film. Since I said, the movie has all this, this nostalgia from old films. So you've got all kinds of things, not just references to King Arthur and Excalibur and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but Batman. Like I said, you find Batman stuff all over throughout the movie, including the Batmobile, at least the best version of the Batmobile, that, from my perspective. I know you guys have seen some of the Batman movies because we talked about Batman Begins before, which is a really cool Batmobile, but the best Batmobile, and you can disagree with me, is got to be the one from the 1966 TV series. I was very happy when it made an appearance, but I was very sad when it was destroyed in the race. So they got those kind of things. And some of the movie posters, I actually pulled a few up. Let me see if I can find them. Maybe you've seen these movies, maybe you haven't. But how many of you have seen Back to the Future? Talking about a great hero's journey film. Marty, yeah. Oh, okay. I want to go back before I go on. Yeah, so good. Yeah, I figured you guys would be familiar with Marty McFly, but the text, the comment that I'm just reading here, that the call to adventure might be the oasis itself. Yeah, and a way to escape the real world. It really is a lure, right? It's the thing that, again, it sweeps you away, kind of escapism, right? This way to get out of the misery. I mean, because he grows up in it. I mean, the whole world seems to be this dystopian future. You know, if you're not somebody that runs a big company like IOI, everything seems to be pretty miserable out there. So to get out of that, that could be a call. So it's not really to the quest, though. So that's the one difference. I think you actually need the call to engage in the actual hero's quest. So it's an adventure for sure. It's just not the adventure that we need yet. So cool. Yeah, Back to the Future is a classic. I don't remember if I put it on the worksheet, not worksheet, but the list of movies when I gave you the assignment to do a analysis of a hero's journey in a film. I gave you that list of recommended movies, things I thought would be good. I don't remember if I put Back to the Future on it or not, but it is a fantastic one that would work. Got a serious transformation of the character over the course of the film, and of course this whole idea of transitioning from the world into the world of adventure when he goes back in time in the DeLorean. So I love that they incorporate the DeLorean into the movie. So I guess they came out with a bunch of different movie posters when the movie first came out way back when. I'm trying to remember the year, but it was... I don't remember when the movie came out. Anyways, so they got the Back to the Future. This one, let's see if you guys can name some of these movies. And I don't know if I saw references to this movie specifically in the film. I'd have to go back and see again. But I'm sure there was a reference if they put out a movie poster with this kind of stuff. Beetlejuice. Yeah, good. Beetlejuice. Okay, 2018? Was it that recently? Okay. For some reason, I was thinking it was a few years older, but that's cool. So, Beetlejuice, this one, This is another good example when I was talking about cult classics, when we did Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, and stuff like that. This is also another cult classic. Not Final Fantasy, good guess. There was not a remake, there was a sequel made also in the last couple of years. Not Species, no. It's a Harrison Ford movie from back when Harrison Ford was young. Not Alien, but you're getting closer, I think. Rutger Hauer plays android. I'm trying to think if he was in something we talked about recently. Yeah, he was in Batman Begins. He played the guy that ran Wayne Enterprises in that movie. I don't know if that helps you, the actor. It's Blade Runner. It's a sci-fi classic, Blade Runner. But they did come out with a Blade Runner sequel, like I said, not too many years back. Maybe even more recently than Ready Player One. I don't even know. Might be the same year as Ready Player One for all I know. What about this one? This is another one from the 80s. I think so far all the ones that have shown up here are from the 80s. Like I said, they've got references to things from the 60s, the 70s, a lot of 80s stuff. And those were my years when I was in high school. So I remember the 80s well. Anybody see this movie? This is more of a teen. Yes, Breakfast Club. Very good. I should give bonus points. This will be another good assignment. I should give bonus points for being able to identify these movies. What about this one? I've never seen this one, to tell you the truth. Bullet. It is Bullet. Yeah. Now, who is in Bullet? I think this is older. I think this is a 70s film, if I'm remembering. I want to say Steve McQueen, but I could be way off. Well, you guessed Bullet, so you must know a little bit about the film. Or do you just know the... Okay. Have you seen the film? It's Steve McQueen. Okay, so I was right. Sorry. Yeah, I've never seen the movie, but the cover and stuff is familiar. Cool. Is it a good film? It must be pretty good. I mean, They wouldn't include it as a kind of a classic if it wasn't good. Okay, cool. This is one of my all-time favorites. If you have not seen this movie, you definitely need to see this movie. Every once in a while it'll be on TV. But nowadays you don't need to wait, right? You can stream all these things. Goonies, yes, Goonies. Fantastic film. So it's another quest movie. If you have not seen Goonies, Goonies is a quest movie with kids that takes you into this world of adventure, this whole underground realm. You come out into the pirate ship at the end. I remember seeing this when I was really young. I think I saw it in the theater when it came out, to tell you the truth. But the main actor, Sean Astin, of course, went on to do other great hero's journey movies. So the main kid. Do you guys know Sean Astin? I'm trying to remember his name in Goonies, and I can't remember. Yeah, I would be shocked that you haven't seen it too. Shame on you. Anyway, Sean Astin there's at least 2 other movies that I would put on my list if I haven't already done that are great hero's journey films. One of them is Rudy. Okay, when he got older, he played Rudy. Have you seen Rudy, football movie? Where he played for the team at Notre Dame. It was Notre Dame, right? I think it was Notre Dame football team. Okay, well, great. If you like sports movies, and I'm not a huge sports person, but that movie is absolutely fantastic. And then even better, because I am a fantasy, geek. Lord of the Rings, right? He plays Samwise, one of the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings films. Good. Okay, so that's the kid from Goonies. This is an animated classic. And again, I have not seen this one. My wife tells me I should see this one. She loves this movie. Good, you guys nailed that one pretty quick. That's hard to miss. Plays a big role. It's hard to miss the character in the movie, too. It's not just something in the background. It plays a pretty big role. The Iron Giant. Speaking of, the journey inward, right? The belly of the whale, or however you want to call it. This movie, that is David Bowie. Very good. Or used to be David Bowie until they redid the cover. Labyrinth. Very good, Labyrinth. So it's a fantasy Labyrinth movie. And here's another one of my favorites, because I definitely saw this one in the theater when I was a kid, and I left the movie and I was so excited. This was one of my favorite films. Hint? Teenage Vampires in California. Lost Boys, good. Yes, Lost Boys. And this one, I believe, is from the 90s, so we're actually moving a little bit further forward. All the other ones, Matrix, everybody knows the Matrix. That's not even a challenge. Okay, a little bit back to the day, but there's so many sequels. Rambo, very good Rambo film. 80s film. One that I never saw because I wasn't a huge fan of the actor, but everybody knows the actor, whose name just slipped my memory. If I gave you the name, you might be able to guess the movie. Maybe not. It's when he was a kid, teenager. How can I not think of his name? He was the one that is involved in Scientology. He was jumping on the couch on the Oprah show. Very famous. Tom Cruise, yeah. That's a bad way to remember him after, I should say something like Top Gun or one of his other famous movies. Yeah, it's an early Tom Cruise movie. Anybody have a clue? Very famous scene where he's dancing with his sunglasses in his underwear. Doesn't help, does it? Risky Business. Risky Business. Yeah, and that's the last one that I've got. Of course. Cool. All right. Oops, let me see your chats. Yeah, trivia time. Should have a trivia night here at the humanities class instead of mythology. We could do myth trivia. So, okay, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really wanted to address. I mean, it was fun to have a little bit of a time to unwind. I know we've been going on for about an hour. That would be a good way to study for the final. A trivia contest, but it would take me a good amount of time to come up with a good way to do that. I guess there's been plenty of visuals that I've used in the different PowerPoints over the course of the semester, so I could probably do a visual slideshow and have you guys identify which characters or which stories these things are from. Of course, you could feel free to throw together something, form a study group, or anyways, I probably won't have time to do that. Nonetheless, great movie. Thank you for the conversation. Like I said, I always enjoy talking to you guys after the lectures, and now we had a whole night when we just got to do that. So I wish more people could join us, but I had a feeling it was going to be kind of a small class because the holiday tomorrow, some people might be traveling in opposition to all regulations by the government. But I don't know if they want me on their team for trivia night. I haven't actually done a trivia night in years. I forget when the last time I ever did that was. Of course, we used to play that, around the holidays. I think my mom used to have a Trivial Pursuit game. Yes, there you go. Right, you're probably typing it as I was saying it. Yeah, there's so many different versions of that now. I think I've got somewhere in the house a Trivial Pursuit from Saturday Night Live version, which I'm probably not that great at because I don't know as much. Of course, it's an older game, and I only know some of the older Saturday Night Live stuff. But they've got that for everything. I really want to get a hold of one that's like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, or one of those things. Oh, yeah, update on the cat. Please. Starting chasing the old cat. Oh, so he's a bully. Chasing the older cats away.
He's pretty tough. He'll like drag the bowl away from them and eat it himself.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, though. Do they leave anything for the others? Do they like come in when he's not looking and try to get a hold of some food? Oh no, you're fine. I mean, the audio came through really clearly when you said that. Am I breaking up on your end too? Oh, I had to separate their bowls. Probably a good idea. You don't want the other cats starving to death. Aeneas. Still calling him? What you were calling him? Just A, I think. Nay. Okay, that's right. I forgot. How could I forget that? Well, good. Thank you for the update. What else do I want to add? Anyways, next week, just so that you know. Okay, when he's in trouble, you call him Aeneas. So it's like being scolded. It's like when your mom uses your middle name. Or all yeah. I used to get that a lot growing up. That's funny. I love it. Yeah, keep with the updates though. Yeah, so next week we are going to go back kind of lecture format again. Maybe not quite as formal as it's been. We're going to be doing the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which you have a week to finish reading. If you haven't finished reading it yet, we'll handle that at our class. And at the same time, since it's an extra long session, since it's our last week together, we're going to be doing Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So if you haven't finished that book, or the Sorcerer's Stone, right, American version, because Americans are not as intelligent as British, read that as well, and we'll separate that into 2 lectures next week. So we'll do, as we've done before, lecture, take a break, and then we'll have lecture part 2. Yeah, have you heard that before? The reason why they changed the name? I'll talk about it next week. If you have, that's the reason. Anyways, any other comments, any other questions, any other things that you want to mention before I let you guys go? All right. Well, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And hopefully more people will be back with us next week when it's not a holiday, but enjoy the time. Stay safe. Hopefully you'll be able to get together with family. Yeah, all right. Take care. Good night. I'll see y'all next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.